Good morning. Thanks for joining us on the education series, The Pros and Cons of Traditional Home Canning, Freeze-Dried, and Dehydrated. Sorry for the technical difficulties. We're going to do a reshoot. I guess that's someone who's a Facebook Live, especially when you're technology challenged like I am. We're going to start off for just a second with something from last week from the education series, food storage equipment, the kind of food storage equipment. I showed one, and then I forgot to talk about it. So here it is. This is a grain mill, an electric grain mill. You're going to put your grain in here. It's going to go down through. It'll feed out through the bottom. I want you to see how hard it is to get this thing up with one hand. Flour comes out through here, goes through here. One of the problems with this particular type of grain mill is this little silver button hooks into here, and it makes it very difficult because it creates an airtight seal so the flour doesn't go anywhere. So it's very hard to get that up, even with two hands, because there's another one on the other side. So it literally takes almost two people to get this thing off and the lid off without spilling flour all over the place. This brand makes another version, $80 more, that has a drawer that pulls out, same kind of height, but the drawer pulls out. And honestly, it's worth $80 to buy the other kind. I'm just saying, if I had to do over again, that's what I would buy. You have to clean these out so that they're brand new every single time you use them, otherwise the oil goes rancid. So because it's so cumbersome to make, I tend to grind all of my wheat, all of my rice, wheat into flour, rice into flour, dehydrated corn into cornmeal, just so I can get it done and over with, throw it in baggies, put it in the freezer. So again, if you had a chance, spend the extra $80 and get that one. All right, so today we're going to talk about the pros and cons of traditional canning, that's what that is, freeze-dried, and dehydrated. So let's talk about the cons of each of those three. The con in traditional home canning, you're seeing it right there, is water. Okay, I don't have a lot of traditional home canning left because when we moved we ate most of it from when we were in California in anticipation of moving to Texas, because I had visions of water-filled, jars breaking on the way over here and just ruining. The food would be ruined, my stuff would be ruined, everything would be ruined. I just had visions of it. So that's one of the big cons of traditional home canning. Freeze-dried, absolutely. The biggest con to freeze-dried is price. No way around it. Unless you buy wholesale, which you can do if you want to join my team, veganthrive.com. I will put a link down below, and buy the vegetarian kit. You don't have to sell to anybody else. That's actually why I got involved with Thrive Life, was to buy my own food storage and stockpile my own food storage at wholesale pricing. But price is absolutely a con when it comes to freeze drying. Unless you're going to spend $2,000 and buy your own home freeze dryer, which I meant to talk about last week, but from Harvest Right. But that's $2,000, and honestly, $2,000 buys a lot of food, so that's why I haven't bought one of those either. Okay, dehydrated food. Biggest con with dehydrated food is sizing. You need to have fuel. So the biggest problem is size. Knowing how much of a dehydrated product you need in order for your recipe. The second con to hydrating is you're going to have not only water to eat it, or to rehydrate it, and so it's edible, but you're also going to have fuel. You can't just throw it in water and hope that it works. So that's an issue. Although I do have a workaround for that when we get to our series on thermos cooking. So those are the cons. Pluses. Obviously, traditional home canning, it's already cooked, it's already ready to eat. It might be cold, but you can eat it straight out of the can. Freeze-dried, same thing. Actually, except you don't have the cold, mushy stuff. It's going to be ready to eat straight out of the can. The con with dehydrated is anybody can do it. $70 for a dehydrator, buy a bunch of vegetables, or if you grow your own, the food's free. My grandfather built a home dehydrator, and he grew, a huge, 1 acre, 2 acre organic garden. And he dehydrated all his stuff, so his food was free. That's it. You can't be free. Not even me. So those are the big pluses. Let's talk about the differences. To our right here is freeze-dried corn from Thrive Life, and that is home dehydrated corn. Now that corn happens to be, I went to the grocery store, bought a 5-pound bag of frozen mixed vegetables, dehydrated it, canned it, and by the way, 5 pounds went to, I've used some of it, took about 2 cups, went to about, fills about a half a jar. A 5-pound bag fills about a half a jar. So that again is one more demonstration of how are you going to know a cup of dehydrated is not going to be the equivalent of, you know, a cup of, you know, mixed vegetables or whatever. So you really have to kind of guess around with it and play around with it. And, you know, if you're today where you're not, you know, if you live in Texas and you don't have a big problem, you got time to figure it out. If you're sitting in New Jersey or New York right now under 8 feet of snow and no power, that's probably not the time when you want to be experimenting with your food storage. So I'm just saying, it's something to think about. This is another example. When I did that, I told you last week that there was a run on sweet potatoes on my store. They had them on sale for like 38 cents a pound. I literally bought the store out. I made sweet potato chips. Those cool. That's like so cute. And they're bright orange. I don't know if you can see. And then I dehydrated some in, I don't know what they are. I guess dials, or I don't know what they are. You know, little spindle things. To kind of get, I didn't want to do chunks because that you have a problem in dehydrating with things dehydrating on the outside but not dehydrating on the inside. So I wanted it to be kind of uniform and dehydrate all the way through, so I made them in these little circles. And so this is dehydrated, you know, sweet potato. When they cook up about, you know, they look really, really nice. They look just like traditional food, like you would never know that they had been dehydrated. So that's a plus of dehydrating. Freeze-dried's the same way. But again, how are you going to know how much to use? Right next to it is freeze-dried sweet potato. If something calls for 2 cups of sweet potato, you can scoop out 2 cups of sweet potato, and it's going to be a 1-to-1 ratio. So that's, like I said, one of the biggest thing. This is dehydrated bell pepper. I actually really like it. I really like it dehydrated. I have a preference, to be honest, for dehydrated bell pepper, just in what I use it for. I have this vegan basmati curry pepper recipe that's just like the bomb, and I could use freeze-dried bell pepper, but I prefer dehydrated. I just like the texture of it better in that particular meal. But there are other meals where, once again, okay, there's an example of freeze-dried, okay? So if I'm calling for, if it calls for like 2 bell peppers, Thrive has this really cool comparison chart. So if you look over here under, where is it? Bell peppers, there you are, red and green peppers, freeze-dried. A cup of bell pepper is equal to 1 bell pepper. Okay, so if you've got a recipe that's calling for 2 bell peppers, you're just going to have 2 cups of freeze-dried bell pepper, and you don't have to worry about the measurement. It's literally almost a 1-to-1 ratio. Whereas, you know, that is literally the equivalent of about 8 bell peppers that I dehydrated. I only know that because I dehydrated myself. So I'm just saying, you know, you lose about 80 to 90% of water when you dehydrate. And that's a good thing. That's not a bad thing. But it makes it really difficult to then remember what the ratios are. The only exception to that, and you're going to want to dehydrate these, there's really no such thing as freeze-dried. These are white and red beans that I have cooked in a pressure cooker. We talked last week about how you want to have an electric pressure cooker as part of your food storage equipment, that I cooked, then dehydrated. And the difference between these and normal, you know, uncooked beans is really not much. These beans are probably the only thing where you don't lose a lot of size on them. you get them open, you know, and they split open a little bit, you know, like they would, or that they wouldn't if you were cooking them traditionally. But the volume is pretty much going to be relatively close to a traditional uncooked product. Why would you want to cook and dehydrate your own beans? Because these babies are going to cook up in about 10 minutes. Whereas you cook them without soaking them overnight. Your choices are soak them overnight, and then cook them in about, what, 20, 30 minutes? I've never done it without a pressure cooker, so I don't know. Or you can cook them from scratch without soaking them, and it'll take over 2 hours. That's a lot of fuel when you're sitting in the middle of, you know, upstate New York and have no power and no fuel. So it's something to think about. Really, really is something to think about. The other pluses to freeze-dried food, I just want to point some things out. When we started buying freeze-dried food, we started buying it to replace things that went bad fast. In a vegan household, there are some things you use a lot of, and some things that just go bad so fast that and they're expensive, you know, and kale is one of those things. So I just want to show you what my kale looks like after 6 months. That's my kale after 6 months. Where's my little lid thingy? My can's been open for 6 months. And my kale looks just great. And not only that, but you know what? The freeze-dried process, for some reason, the freeze-dried process in kale takes out that kale dirt taste. You know, if you use a lot of kale, you know what I'm talking about. But my kale is still good 6 months from now. What does yours look like? It's going to look like 6 months from now if you throw it in the refrigerator. Not very, you know, great. This is celery. Okay? This is freeze-dried celery. It looks just like the real thing, same size and everything. So that's, you know, some of the pluses. I'm going to do one more comparison. This is butternut squash. Okay? This is butternut squash. And that's freeze-dried butternut squash, and it looks pretty much the same size as you would get, you know, normally if you cut it up yourself. And this, see if I can get it out of here, is dehydrated butternut squash. Now, it's going to cook up and look okay, but does it look like it's, and which one of these is edible right now? This one's edible. This one, not so much. Like little burnt, like, you know, butternut squash pieces. By the way, I don't know if you saw that. Okay, if you add like the little, what, ½ inch of stuff. This much butternut squash, that was 16 ounces. That was a full pound of butternut squash that I dehydrated down to, like, what is that? 1/8 of an inch? I'm just saying. So those are the pros and the cons. Okay? Cons, price, if you don't get it wholesale, from being, you know, joining my team, feel free. I'll put the link down below. So definitely con is a price, is an issue. Price is an issue, unless you get it wholesale. Traditional, one of the cons is, you know, it's fragile. With all that water, it's fragile. If you move around a lot like I do, that's a problem. Con for dehydrated, ratio, and time, and water and fuel. Pluses, dehydrated, if you grow your own vegetables, you're talking free food. It's preserves, it's put in like this with, you know, a lid and a jar sealer like we talked about before. It's going to keep 3 to 5 years, so it's long-term storage. Oh, I'm sorry, I should have mentioned one of the other cons to traditional. It says this is not long-term storage. Okay, don't be like my mother, who would can something like this and keep it on her shelf for 25 years and think it was still going to be good, you know, 25 years from now. Don't do that. It's not going to be. Okay, when you can something like this, you know, in traditional, you know, food storage, you're looking at a year, maybe 2 at the most. But one of the pros of traditional is it's easy to learn, it's easy to do, and it absolutely is ready to eat out of the jar, you know, just like that. Pros to freeze-dried food, it's 1-to-1 ratio. You can eat it out of the can, and it'll last unopened 25 years and anywhere from 6 months to a year, depending on where you live, opened. So, and it's really lightweight as well. So is dehydrated food, by the way. That's really lightweight. So dehydrated and freeze-dried are going to be really lightweight, but traditional is going to be really heavy. I have moved more than my share. Alrighty, that's it. So I didn't mean to keep you so long this week. Talk to you later. Start putting food by. And we'll see you. Didn't you like my hand right there? Talk to you later. Bye.